Yeah, cool.
You know?
Since I have campus and distance students taking the same course, I used to produce separate videos for distance students. So I was essentially running 2 courses simultaneously with the same content, one face-to-face normal lecture style, and then I'd go away and make a digital version, and that was good, but it was a lot of work. And then more recently I learnt about some of the features of Echo 360, which we use to record our lectures and which kind of happens anyway. I don't have to do anything to get an Echo 360 recording, and working with that for my distance students. So my basic principle is sort of to come to class imagining that there's 80 students sitting inside the camera at the back of the room and that they are part of it. And I think if you kind of start with that premise, then it's not too hard to include your distance students. Often you get the feedback from distance students that they feel invisible, they don't feel included, like they don't really matter, and that's pretty disheartening because they've paid the same fees as anyone else. They're often taking time away from family, or in the case of teacher education, often they've left a career to become a teacher, so they've made a huge sacrifice, and they want a quality experience just like the campus students do. It's quite simple things in some ways. At the start of the class, I would always greet the students in front of me, say, how are you doing, what's been happening this week, start with an anecdote or just some way of connecting with people. Kind of a basic principle of connecting with people is eye contact. So I look at the camera in the back of the room and say welcome also to our distance students, and I get the campus students to wave to the camera, and then that kind of raises the campus students' awareness as well, as even though currently it's not simultaneous, there's 80 other students who are going to be viewing this and are part of your cohort. I make very sure that anything that the students in front of me, the campus students, can see and hear, the distance students are going to be able to see and hear in high quality through the recording that's made. And that's not, it's not rocket science. I don't do anything that technologically complex. But for example, I don't tend to use the whiteboard because the whiteboard doesn't show it very clearly in the video from a camera that's way up the back of the room. You just can't see it very well, so I use a document camera instead. If I write something down, I write it on a piece of paper underneath the document camera instead of writing it on the whiteboard. If there's a discussion going on in class, I want the distance students to be able to hear that. It's not simultaneous, so they can't be part of the discussion, and maybe that's something for the future, but give anyone who speaks a microphone. And that means that it's not just all about me. Just as the campus students enjoy talking to each other and having discussion, that's part of the pedagogy I like to use in my classes, is it's not just me talking for 2 hours, it's interactive. Distance students can at least clearly hear what the campus students are saying. The campus students feel a little bit thrown by that initially when you put a microphone in their hands in the first class, because they're not used to it. But after the first class, they just know. In David's classes, whenever anyone speaks, he's going to insist they use a microphone, and they just get used to it, and it almost becomes a bit of a joke. There'll be someone running around the classroom with a microphone if there's a debate going on, and it's just not an issue after a while. And the distance students really appreciate it because they can hear what's happening. If I'm demonstrating materials, which I need to do quite a lot, I'm teaching people how to teach mathematics to children. So there's a lot of blocks, there's a lot of diagrams. It's quite visual what I have to do. So I'll often bring along my cubes or my abacus and things like that and put them underneath the document camera so that the distance students can clearly see them. There's a lot of stuff I bring to class. I come to class with a big trolley full of equipment and often books, and I can't send them through the camera. So any handout that I give to students in front of me is uploaded to Learn before the class. And again, I'm talking to the students in the camera, I'm imagining those students in the camera. So if there's a handout, there's a mathematics activity, for example, that's on paper, and I'm passing around because sometimes I still like to use paper. I will look at the camera and say, okay, distance students, you need to download this, and I've got one folder each week. The distance students always know this folder will contain any handouts from the class, and they can print them off. I'll also try to use materials that they can replicate. So if I'm handing around multi-link cubes for the campus students to make kind of geometric shapes out of, then I'll say to the distance students, hey, maybe you might have some Lego at home or just anything you can stack. If we're using counters, you know, I'll try to go for things that you can replicate with basic household materials that they're likely to have around. Yeah, so I guess for the distance students, the first port of call is a website. It's the Learn page for the course. Whereas I feel like your orientation to figuring stuff out as a campus student is I'll go to class, and if I go to class, the lecturer will tell me what I need to do and tell me about the timetables. And I try actually not to even do that for the campus students. And that's for consistency. They know that they have to go to the website as well. I'm not going to tell them about all the deadlines. I don't even give assessment briefings in class, because then there can be a perceived inconsistency. So I make a video explaining, you know, in detail, here's most of the questions I usually get about the assessment, and here's my answer to them. And campus and distance students can view that video, but I have precious time together with them in class, and I don't want to spend too much of that on admin. So my expectation for both distance and campus students is that you're looking at this week's page on Learn every week, and that will tell you the tasks you have to do. One of those tasks is coming to class if you're on campus, and one of those tasks is watching the video if you're a distance student. But there will be others like readings and other videos you might need to watch, you might need to do. This would be a good time to get started on a certain aspect of your assignment after this week's content, but I'm not actually going to tell you about that in class, because that's not what class is for. You figure out what to do by following the website. And so on Learn, when I remember, or when I have time, almost every week I have a welcome video, and that welcome video might be about 5 minutes, and it's just saying hi, and it's saying, hey, here's what this week is about, here are the main tasks, this is where you're at. I know we're getting to a busy point in the semester, you're probably feeling overwhelmed, but in a few weeks it's going to feel okay. So I could not make a video and just write that stuff down. I could say, welcome to week 3. This week your tasks are, and make a bullet point list. And that would be fine. That would give them the information they need. But I feel like using video a little bit more helps distance students feel more connected, because they're seeing a real face and they feel like you're more of a human when you can't be with them in person, you're more of a human to them over video than you are via text on the screen. So a short video saying, hi, how are you going? Here's what we're doing this week. Here's what it's about. Here's why I think it's so important. We've only got a short number of weeks together. I had to be really selective about what to include in this course, and here's why I've got 1 week on using physical materials. Here are the main tasks. And I think that just helps them feel like, A, I'm thinking about them and I know they exist, and B, they're not just spending all of their time reading because they decided to be a distance student. Some distance courses can be very, very text dense, and that can be just slightly overwhelming and just not high quality pedagogy really. Then in every week the layout of that weekly page is the same. So they're not spending half their time figuring out how to navigate the course website. It's the same every week. There's a list of tasks for distance and campus students, and that list will be the same except for distance students watching a video and campus students coming to class. So then they have a feeling there's consistency. They're not separate courses, they're just slightly different delivery modes for the same course. And then below that there'll be any resources relevant to that week. And so they're not thinking, have I done enough? I don't know if I've done enough. Because they can tick off the list. Take things one step at a time. You already know how to teach, so don't see it as this dramatic new, revolution in your pedagogy. There'll always be things you want to improve and work on about the way you teach, and we should all be doing that, continue to do that. But taking on distance students, the fundamental principles don't change. You just need to make a few adaptations, and they're not super high-tech adaptions, or they might be, but for me they haven't been super high-tech adaptions. I haven't learnt any particularly advanced techniques, I don't feel. I've learned a little bit about Echo 360, so I know how to edit out the 10-minute gap in the middle of my class. And if I turn up late to class, which sometimes happens, or if I don't really get started until 5 minutes after the recording begins, I know how to lop that piece off the start of the recording. And the distance students really appreciate that, because they're not going click, 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 I wonder when he's going to start. You know, it's just annoying, and a relatively 5-10 minute job once a week from me makes it so much easier for them to actually just watch the things they need to watch. I've learnt to use a document camera. Again, not particularly complicated. I've learned how to follow the instructions on this lectern screen so that I know which of the two monitors behind me is actually being recorded. So I'm not talking about something that I'm not referring to a slide, but the distance student, it doesn't exist for the distance students. I generally make both the monitors the same so that I can't get that one wrong. So I'd say keep doing what you're doing, but think about how you make your classes accessible and interesting and worthwhile and just good learning experiences for the students in front of you, and think, okay, what aspects of that are my distance students going to miss out on if I just expect them to follow an unedited video recording in which I'm exclusively focused on the campus students and there just happen to be a camera in the back of the room. In what ways might they feel excluded? Okay, I can't give handouts through the camera, so maybe I need to upload them somewhere. Students in front of me are getting eye contact, the camera's not getting eye contact, maybe I should look at the camera sometime. If there was one thing, one initial change where the students have said to me, wow, this is so amazing, and I thought that was so easy, was just editing out the middle of my classes, editing out gaps, giving students microphones, and making sure your material is clearly visible. Those three things will not take you much extra time at all and go a long way to making distance students feel included. Greeting them via the camera at the start of every class. It takes no preparation, it takes no extra time, and it makes a real difference to their experience, because I think, okay, he actually knows that that half his class, or whatever proportion of this class, is not in the room and has acknowledged that. It's getting over yourself slightly as well, and I think I had to get past this idea that anything on camera or anything that's video of me in the public domain is kind of this huge deal, or that it needs to be well edited, or I can't have a pause, I can't lose my train of thought. And that might apply to creating a slick film or something, but in the context of a class, people expect their teacher to be human and have human moments. So when I'm creating the 5-minute welcome video, if I lose my train of thought, or if I kind of say something incoherent, or one of my kids comes in during the video or something, I just leave it in. And because it's not, it's not high quality, I'm not creating a documentary, I'm just saying hi. So those normal things, it's okay for them to be there, so I don't feel I have to do anything too sophisticated. I don't have to edit that.